already know you. Okay, I'm going to do this again. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another beautiful session with the Black authors of Edmonton. I'm so excited to meet you both. Can I have a short introduction? Alison is very popular, but I would still like a small little introduction from her own mouth. Alison?
Okay. There's so much going on. I'm a poet and a fantasy author, so I traverse different worlds between poetry and prose. The last year was the year of Phyllis. So last year was the 250th anniversary of the publication of her book of poems. And there was a year-long celebrations. I was invited to at least three, and it was very exciting. So I was in DC conference presenting a paper on Phyllis, and this conference vacillated between DC and other areas around DC, Maryland, includes another university, and that was wonderful to connect with people about Phyllis, power of poetry, words, storytelling. It was very fascinating and wonderful. And then I jet off to Texas, where all expenses for me were paid. That was very exciting. And I went to the Hyatt. I stayed at the Hyatt, and they paid for me. And there I talked to university students, and I was part of a panel talking about how Phyllis, her life and work, shaped my book of poetry about her and tell Phyllis. And it was a wonderful discussion. So I was a panelist along with another Black woman poet. So that was also very exciting, connected to university students and so on.
We'll delve deeper into each of these things as we go forward.
Yes.
I'm going to move to Chidi so that he can give us a brief.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Chidi. I'm the author of Coming to Canada, the Ultimate Success Guide for New Immigrants. I live in Edmonton, Alberta.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that is like, a ready reckoner for everybody else who's coming into Canada. So I'm really interested in this because personally, I've been involved a lot with immigrant work and advocacy and a lot of, anti-racism work and stuff like that. So I'm really interested to listen more about this practical guide you have made for, new immigrants to Canada. Can you actually throw some light on what are the main key topics you have, spoken about and other things? But before we do that, Chidi, let me just ask Yaa to give us welcome, Yaa. It's so nice to have you too. I was really looking forward to speak to you. My name is Mary, and I'm so excited to have the really bright young authors in 3 different genres. So it's really exciting for me to meet all of you and to have this conversation. So welcome. And could you give us a short, brief introduction about what got you into writing? And, I've read it, but I just want it from you.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. So I think I was intrigued by books because I grew up in an environment where there were not so much books and there were not a lot of reading materials, and like how a lot of us thought that Mizrim or Egypt was up there in heaven. I didn't know authors were real. So yeah, I read a lot of books as compared to most of my contemporaries. I read books and I wanted to see a picture of me at the back of a book. That was my biggest achievement. Whatever happened after that, I didn't even care that I can make money out of book or anything. All I wanted was to be one of those people that I read their books. And when I was growing up, my best book was from Agatha Christie.
Wow, me too.
I love Agatha Christie. Yes, I read most of her books, and I couldn't believe that she's real or she's a human being living on this earth. So
interesting. So what was the first thing that you thought that this would be good content to put out into the community? What was the whole premise of your book, your first book?
Interestingly, I think knowingly or unknowingly, we write from the point of knowing. I can't write rocket science. So I thought that my personal story can be intriguing enough, or somebody can learn from my own challenges, my background, where I have been. So I started writing poems and drama using my background, my setting, and songs and people that I have met. So I thought that's how I started writing, from telling people my personal story.
Oh, wow. This is so beautiful. Do share any link from which, people can actually buy your books, and then we will have it play on the screen. So each of your um, online link from which, people can purchase, please put it into the chat. We can
Oh,
we can
okay.
actually have it flowing on the screen while we talk. So
Okay.
moving on to Chidi, we were just talking about his immigrant experience and how he decided to put that in a book as a ready reckoner for people who are, coming to Canada and Edmonton. So, what were the kind of experiences, Chidi, that propelled you to write this book? What were the things that you thought were extenuating?
We came to Canada, and my family and I were widely travel around for education and for work and for business. But relocation to another country, coming to live and finding your feet, finding job and all that was a different kettle of fish. We thought it was going to be easy, but 6 months after coming to Canada, we haven't even found a job. So there was so much that we had to navigate through, so much we had to find answers to. And so the book encompasses those experiences that I have had. And then after that experience we welcomed and helped other people in our community to settle in Canada as well. So more or less my own personal experience, the experience of others, and then working with the ecosystem that support new immigrants. So the community association, some of the immigration settlement agencies and all of that. So all of that experience and knowledge I put in the book. What I set out to do was to address the top 10 challenges that immigrants have when they come to Canada. So each chapter addresses one thing that is very peculiar, that have been identified as a problem for newcomers when they land in Canada. The Canadian immigration system or settlement system is still a mess. Even with all the money that has been thrown into the system, part of the challenge I have with the system and the process as it is today is they don't seem to appreciate that many of the people who are coming into Canada are very experienced and very educated individuals from where they're coming from. So it's still the same basic thing that are offering everybody. So you have to find a transition job. And the transition job that giving you a job that many of us won't be 10 years, 20 years ago, wouldn't even touch it, right, from where we're coming from. So, that's some of the challenges I have with the whole system. And so we're trying to see if we can get that information out there to say this is what people need. This is where the pain points are, so that resources can be channeled towards that point, basically.
Perfect. So what are the other challenges you identified other than survival jobs?
Well, there's that big elephant in the room, which is racism, right? So I was a banker back home, and the only job I could get here when I came in as a banker was something that, again, like I mentioned, I couldn't have done back home 17 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I would like you to list them, because if we can take the whole half an hour to talk about the entire book. But if you could just list the challenges that you face. Yeah.
Okay. So the chapters I include things that are as simple as documentations you need to bring to Canada. So before you set out, right? The first 7 days in Canada, or first 14 days in Canada, sorry, the first 2 weeks in Canada, what are the things you need to do, the registrations you need to happen and all of that, finding accommodation, things like getting the registrations in, finding accommodation, the Canadian workplace culture, navigating it. So what is it that you expected to do and all of that. We also looked at relationships. How is the relocation experience affecting relationships in the immigrant community? Because we are seeing so much of people coming in and relationships tearing up and down, and people don't understand what is going on. The power dynamics that happen. That's the landmines, and From there, we talk about parenting in North America, which is a different challenge.
Totally.
Depending from an intercultural perspective is way, way different. So are you spanking? Are you shouting? Are you going to be what is the limit, right? Up until
I'm so enjoying this. I'm sure to go and actually take a look at your online book. I love this whole this topic, but I don't want to just talk to you, so I have to engage my other authors too. So let me go to Alison. She's an amazing poet, and you can just find yourself being drawn when you start reading her poetry. So Alison, I have spoken to you many times, but I don't know whether the audiences really know you that well. So like, what are the key things that you would like to share with your audiences today about the poetry you've written? What are the things that you think that like people are really waiting to read about your books?
Well, I don't know. I just love story. People have told me my words are very musical, and they have a musicality to it, and I enjoy just putting stories together. Phyllis is very biographical, so I'm very excited about that. And now I'm doing a new journey now, and I'm writing writing. We'll have published one way or the other. Historical fiction or historical fantasy novel about Harriet E. Wilson, who was the first person of color to publish a novel. So I'm transitioning back into prose, fantasy, or historical fiction, and it's giving me the first book of a trilogy. So keep an eye out for that. So
sure,
still in historical fiction. Phyllis, you could call it historical fiction too, right? And biographical. And now I'm swimming back into prose and fantasy. So for those who've been following me for quite some time, I also write fantasies and traversing back into that world now. And that's kind of the latest thing I'm doing. I'm very excited about it, though. Very excited.
Yeah. You just have such a power with your words, Alison. It's just beautiful reading your writing. And I am one who can flow into it completely and lose myself. So I really enjoyed reading your work.
Thank you.
I'm going to just go to Yaa and, just chat about, the kind of things that you have received once you published your book. What were the kind of feedback you started getting from your community and from people who actually read your book?
Thank you. So I took the self-publishing route since 2009. I've published about 13 of my books, 4 in my mother language.
And what is that language?
Akan. It's one of the major languages in my country, Ghana. So the four books are a drama book in my mother tongue, and then there's one that is my journey, and there's one that I wrote as an inspirational, and then the rest are all children's books. I haven't personally published any of my poems, but I have a lot of poems that have appeared in most of my writing. So with the self-publishing route, what I realized over the years is that there's that, for me, I think it's different from everybody. For me, I just wanted my picture to be at the back of a book. I didn't think about whether I was going to make money out of it. Then when the books came out, then there was this challenge of you being the author, the salesman, the marketer, the everything. So that became a little bit challenging because I cannot live on the income of the book right now. So I have to work and also sell my books. When I came here, I took a lot of tables during Cultural Heritage Days and any other functions that I had. I went and showcased my book. And that was the limitation. I realized that if I have boxes of books sitting in my basement, if I don't go out to sell because I am a self-published author, then the books are not getting anywhere. So those are the challenges I have seen. But interestingly, sometimes it is always good to go on your route, to your roots. So I decided to try the books back home in Ghana. In 2019, I got stuck in Ghana for 8 months thanks to COVID. And I decided to try my books in some of the schools. And in the period that I was there till I came back up to around 2022, I've printed 10,000 copies and
Wow.
sold in Ghana, which was so crazy because I never thought about that. So I tried it in most of the private schools because going through the government route was a long way. They have to go through assessment for the government, the school education body to accept and all those things. I didn't have patience for that. So I connected with most of the private schools. And that is what has given me a lot of leverage to get the books. So it's even sitting here. Last year, I was in Ghana around this time up to May. We printed 3,000 copies. So for me, I've not seen the cash and I'm waiting for the cash. But for me to even think about books, that much of my books being in the hands of kids really just make my mind go wild. So although I haven't had the joy of going through the traditional route of publishing, trying it back home in my country is really doing well, and I don't know how far it will go.
It's quite interesting. I'm sure that many of the principals and teachers that you've spoken to, they must have given you some feedback about your books. Otherwise, they would never have
Yes,
bought it, right?
yes, yeah,
So
yeah. So the
what did you
story
hear
really
from them?
connects. It connects with the kids, and some of them, because I've had the exposure of traveling. There's a book I did, and the title is Fruitabit. So I
Okay.
tried to pick all the fruits in the alphabet. So there
Wow.
was no way I could have written that book if I was just in Ghana. But being exposed to a lot of things here, I was able to research and find names of fruits in all the 26 alphabet. And for them
Wow.
back home, it's also, oh, so this is an addition to the number of fruits that the kids might have known where it comes from. I chose fruits from Japan, fruits from Puerto Rico, which most kids in my country wouldn't have ever come across. So that also give the kids some form of exposure, and they use that to advertise the books to the kids that if you want to travel to Puerto Rico, at least you know one name of a
Yep.
fruit from Puerto Rico or from Japan or from this. Yeah. So it's honestly, it was just try and error. And the way the book has picked in Ghana, I'm just waiting to see the miracle.
Exciting. Wow. I would love to see this book too. I mean, wow. To see all the fruits that are not available even in Canada, right?
Yes, yeah,
That would be
yeah.
exciting. So, going back to Chidi, when exactly did you publish your book? And is that the only book you're going to publish, or do you have some other ideas in your mind?
The book was published in November of 2021,
Okay.
and yet the second one is going through the initial editing and all of that. I just finished it. There are a couple of other ideas that we're looking at to see if we can support. My second book, interestingly, is going to be talking about financial literacy for teens in our community.
Wow. Beautiful. That's exciting.
We're thinking about how do we, as quickly as possible, as early as possible, get people in to know about the dangers of not knowing how to manage money. Okay, because we're in a country where credit is everywhere. You go to Walmart and offer you credit card and all of that. How do you manage yourself? Because there's that contradiction. Where we're coming from is more or less like cash and carry, and here you can get anything you want today, and then you can pay later. So we're trying to navigate and explore what are the contradictions, what are the challenges in between them, but focusing mostly on our kids, because those are the kids that go to school and they tell them a different thing about money. And before you know it, they've ruined their credit history and all of that. So that's what I'm working on now.
That is so practical.
The next one probably
actually so like I'm just so floored that somebody actually took a step and did something like this, because it's such a practical thing to do. And I've been thinking about this since I've been working with immigrants 14 years ago. And so I'm just thinking that why did nobody do this before? Where were you, Chidi? Like, where? I'm so excited that this is actually happening, because I've been talking to people about why, like, we need people to learn about financial literacy in Canada, just like you, and also about emotional intelligence. People have no idea about how to manage their emotions in a way that you don't go out and flare up and do things that completely spoil your reputation, because in Canada it's much easier to do than in your own country because you know your culture, you know how to live there. But here you don't understand the nuances of the cultures, and everybody's all together, and we are so confused by everybody's responses and things, and we really don't understand when they say something, is it exactly what they mean? Or is there something between the lines that I'm not able to see? Because in our country, those languages were spoken differently. We spoke English too, but the things we said it so differently. So when you come here, you're like, I'm good. What is that? Like, what does it mean? So when
Mary,
I
Mary,
came here, somebody told me I'm good. I just asked her, did I tell you you're bad? Like, why did you tell me that?
Mary is amazing because sometimes I teach for organizations. I teach new to Canada classes. It's amazing the kind of differences you see even with the use of the same English language. For
Exactly.
example, when you're in a workplace, your boss tells you take your time. A newcomer would think is a blank check for you to produce the work as whenever you want. But take your time is actually like, I want this as fast as possible on my table. If you understand what I mean. So those nuances in communication, for example, and I'll give you a very real example. Sometimes when I use this, people say, oh, they didn't even understand that's a difference. So when you come in from West Africa, for example, and you come in here and
So
you
West
say,
Africa, where exactly?
Nigeria, okay?
You're from Nigeria, okay.
Yes, I'm from Nigeria. When you're coming from a place like in West Africa, Nigeria, and you say, where we use the terms drugs interchangeably, we use it for drugs and we use it for medication, right? So you say, I want to go and buy drugs. Everybody understands that you want to go to the shop or to the pharmacy to go buy medication. But you come in here and you tell your colleagues at work that you want to go and buy drugs, then you have a conversation with HR because medication and drugs are two different things,
That's true.
right?
Oh,
So,
yes.
and then there are so many of the other parts, the other ones are some of the nuances that you see between the way we are raised traditionally. Another example is you don't look at elders in the eye when you're talking.
Wow.
It's the sign of respect. Now, if you come here and you have anything to do, for example, with senior people or with law enforcement, and you don't look them straight in the eyes, that it seems to do, they will determine that you are
Dishonest.
dishonest. There's something that is not transparent about you, and you'll be in trouble. So navigating all of these things through a period when you just land in here takes a lot of hand-holding.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. That's really key information for new people who are watching this. Let me move to Alison. So, Alison, you were born and raised in Canada, am I right?
Raised in Canada, but I was born in England. And I'm a dual citizen. So I'm West Indian. So my mom is Jamaican. My dad's from Barbados, Barbadian. And I was born in England, but raised here. So I'm multicultural. I'm kind of global from the very beginning.
So when you moved, how old were you when you moved from England to Canada?
Two.
Oh, you were really young. So you didn't have too much of language from there, because the language there is so different. And
It's different. Yeah, it's different. Yeah, it's different. But I remember a lot of vocab though anyway. And when I'm over there, my voice changes.
How interesting. Wow.
Yeah, because you're remembering. Well, I talk to other people who have the same thing. Born in England but raised here. But when they go over there and with family from over there, the voice comes back, the accent comes back.
So when you speak to different people, do you go back to the nice sing-song tune?
Yeah, it's just different. It comes back more Brit when I'm over there because I'm with family who are British. And I think people forget that the verbal is memory. Verbal is memory. And when you go back, it all comes back.
Yeah. Very true. Because my kids, they can speak in that typical Indian accent, and they can speak the pure Canadian style, like when they go outside with their friends, and the two don't match. Like I keep wondering how they shift between these two, because their dad will not understand them very clearly if they go that speed. So it's slow down just for their dad, It's really sweet to watch. But children are so fluid, like they go through these different things very nicely.
Mhm.
So when you moved to Canada, what were the different things that you found starkly different about the culture there and the culture here? Was there anything that you noticed because you were too young, right?
I was young, but I think for me, the vocabulary still stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents would still say lorry and that kind of thing, and roundabout instead of traffic circle. And I still say those things today. So the language is still with us, even though here my accent and voice is different, but the language is
Yeah.
still in here. So we use the Brit terminology anyway, and we watch a lot of the British TV shows, watch Coronation Street here on the TV or telly and all that. So the vocab is still in here, right? And that's what I remember the most. I had cousins who came over from England who actually are still here. When they first came over, the British accent was very strong. And well, unfortunately, you had to amalgamate, assimilate, and the accent went. So what do, right? Because you're trying to be more in the Canadian culture, right? But I'm
Yes.
sure if they went over there, the accent comes back because we can
Right.
vacillate between the different worlds.
So
Because
it's quite interesting that you have so many cultures in you, like your dad, your mom, and where you lived before you came here. There's just so many things that you have experienced in your life, and I'm sure that some of those elements are present in your writing.
oh yeah, yeah.
So,
Because
do you see influences from different, like your paternal side, your maternal side, and where you lived?
I think like with the Sisterhood trilogy, and it's going to happen, I think, with Harriet a little bit. But I'm going to use the Sisterhood trilogy. And I talked with the ancestors, the Ghanaian, because I'm Ghanaian on my dad's side from Barbados.
Oh,
Because the Ghanaians were taken from Ghana, what's now called Ghana, to places like Barbados. And a lot of people don't know that. So you have the Ghanaian in there. We have Irish in there too, which is a different storyline. And on my mom's side, she's Jamaican Chinese. And a lot of
wow.
people don't know the Chinese left from China because of communism and came to islands like Jamaica to start
Oh,
over. So my
oh,
grandmother, my mom's mom came from Canton, China, and went to Jamaica, and worked with her aunts with their shop, and then opened up her own. They called her Madam. So even if you go now, there are a lot of Chinese Jamaicans in Jamaica now. So we have
that is
three
absolutely
main
amazing. I
cultures in
didn't know
there.
this about you.
Yeah. Well, if you look at my eyes, you can see the more the Asian look at my. Which is when I got my contacts in. My glasses, you can't tell. My contacts in, you can see more clearly. And the Asian look of my eyes there. But yeah,
That's hilarious.
I have all these cultures, but a lot of us do though. I think people forget that people of color, black people, we have a lot of different ancestral blood running in our veins, not just the one. I really think people forget that, right? So I write about that a lot in my writing. In this upcoming trilogy, will kind of be the same, the different ancestral lines. I
Oh,
just think it's
beautiful.
important to remember we're more than one thing.
Oh,
We
yes,
are. I'm sure, Mary, you are too. We are more than one
I'm
thing.
sure. My husband always tells me I have African roots because I have such curly hair.
Yeah.
And I
You
think
never know.
everybody has African roots because I think that was where the first man was found.
Yeah,
So,
Eve, first woman. That's right, Eve. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yes,
so
is that.
we are all originated from there.
Yes, yes.
So it's kind of we're coming so close to the close of our program. So I'm going to ask one last question to Yaa before we close. So Yaa, how is it that you would inspire people who are longing to put a pen to paper and become an author? What is it that you think would inspire them? Oh my goodness, yeah, I
We are
think.
yeah,
Sorry,
we
I
are
can't hear you.
reading stories of people of old. And one of the things that I have come to appreciate is crowdsourcing and adding to knowledge. We don't want that gap to be there when we are gone. If we are still reading Shakespeare and we find a lot of knowledge in them, there's a room for everybody to write, especially this time where we find ourselves when it is so easy. I can't imagine when people were writing on backs of paper of trees.
Yeah.
with whatever ink that they have. You have a tool, something as easy as a cell phone where you can type a story and post it on TikTok, and the next day it is in China, it is in Japan.
Yeah.
So this is the time, we haven't come to any time as good as this one. And there's a writer in everyone that there's no way to say that if there's something that I want to put across and it is safe and it is educative, don't put any hesitation on yourself. Keep writing. Yesterday, I have one of the youth in my car, and we were planning our Black History Month, and I told her, you will do the land acknowledgement. And she said, oh, I feel shy. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? She said, I want to do a poem, but I don't know whether people will like it. I'm like, it is not in your place to decide that. I interviewed one of the best Ghanaian musicians, and then I asked him a question. So, which of the song on your album were you thinking it would do well? He said, that is the most surprised part of my career, to know that the song that I least expected to blow up was the one that caught on with people, and that's what made me popular. So that's what I'm telling people, that if you feel like writing, if you feel like even recording and posting it, it's a way of storing knowledge. And one day our history will also be read by our kids.
Yeah, thank you so much, the three of you. You've been such great people to talk to. And, I have learned so much myself. So I'm sure that the audiences are really looking forward to reading the books that you've written. Chidi, Alison, and Yaa, thank you so much for your time. I wish I had more time to chat with you because I have so many more questions bubbling within me. But I will do that again when I meet you next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
You're
Mary.
welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you so much.